Hello, all, and welcome to episode 394 of the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to discuss films either current or classic, as well as maybe share some interesting films or TV-related projects that we love and adore and think you might as well. So we've got a lot of good stuff coming up for you this week. We are going to be reviewing The Little Things, the new cop drama starring Denzel Washington, Jared Leto, and, of course, Rami Malek. But before we get into that conversation, I've got two pretty freaking handsome co-hosts I need to introduce because we're going to be having this conversation together. Jim Pugliafico is here in the virtual studio. Hello, sweetheart. How goes?
Hello, it's going fine. Now that the workday has ended and I can stop and decompress and talk movies with you guys, I listen to a movie podcast all the way home to get me in the mood. So I'm ready to go. We're talking about a new movie today. I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. So yeah, let's roll. Let's rock.
Awesome. Jim, outside of the Movie Bears podcast, name one go-to movie podcast you enjoy. I know there's a lot, but what's one that comes to your mind?
Only because it's the last one I was listening to is Green Screen of Death with our friends Adrian and Bill.
Yes. Yep. Such a good show, and love those guys to death.
They released their top 10, and of course our own Will Lindis was guesting on that show, which was awesome. I had already known Will's top 10, so I was like, okay, it was like deja vu all over again for him. But they have another friend on the show. Her name was
Maria Antunes.
What?
Maria Antunes.
Maria Antunes. Okay, yeah, and of course Bill and Adrian. So that's one I like to go to just because we know those guys and we've hung out with them at movie festivals. Hopefully we will again sometime. But they're always fun to listen to.
Fingers crossed on that. Let's get our vaccines. Let's get some in-person film festivals happening again. And Bill, Adrian, can't wait to see you boys. Very excited about that. Also very excited that Will Lindis is here on the show this week. Will, how the hell are you?
Hey, doing great. Gosh, it's fun to get back into just a straight up normal regular review. It's January is such a weird time for films, right? Like there's a lot of shit that gets dumped into January, but between catching up with awards and festivals and top 10 lists and all of those different things, I'm really glad that we're doing sort of a back to basics style episode, especially one where we can hop in a rocket ship, travel back in time to the 90s. I can watch a 90s crime thriller with you guys here in 2021. And I'm excited to talk to you about that.
Yeah, none of those silly cell phones to get in the way of plot, right?
There is something to be said for a period piece where instant communication can't always happen. It's going to be An interesting discussion about this film, I feel, and I'm looking forward to jumping into that, as well as sharing some plugs at the end of the show. You folks will want to stick around for those. But we got a whole bunch of people hanging out with us already in the live stream, in the live chat. Hamstrack says, "What's up?" Speaking of the 90s, that commercial has come back to haunt us.
Wow.
Don't you remember that, Jim? I think it was a beer commercial. They're like,
What's
"What's
that?"
up?"
Yeah, I remember that.
It was in that like air quotes golden era of Budweiser commercials,
You know
like
what?
that, and the Budweiser frogs, and just all of that.
There you go.
As wow, as silly, nonsensical, and eventually just like overwhelming as that commercial was, that whole ad pitch was. There's been nothing like that the last few years that people would really remember. That's for sure.
Not even during the Super Bowl.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Although Patrick Hoover, our very handsome friend, hey Patrick,
Oh, Patrick.
he says, "Where's the beef?" Another very memorable commercial that's gone through many iterations. I think I know there was a version in the '90s that, if going viral was a thing back then, it went viral. But "Where's the beef" stems all the way back to what, the '70s?
Yeah,
Maybe.
and it's still a thing in at gay events and clubs when we're allowed to have those. I mean, I hear people say it all the time. Where's the beef? Hey, where's the beef?
When they're going out to dinner or go back to their room, either way.
Yeah, whatever.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Commercial Bears podcast, where we bring you the.
Oh my goodness. Patrick says mouths open and tongues out. Events. Yeah. I mean, that's totally it, Patrick, for sure. Anyway.
He's talking about burgers.
I know what he's talking about, but that's not where my mind is.
He's talking about the "What's Up" guys. Ah.
It could be all three. Why not?
All of them.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about with this film, so I'm jonesing to jump in with you fellas. It goes, without saying, probably we are going to spoil the film eventually, but here's the good news for you. The person who may not yet have seen The Little Things, starring Denzel Washington, Jared Leto, and Rami Malek. We're going to talk about the film spoiler-free for probably about 10 minutes or so. We're big fans of, seeing a movie and forming your own opinion. But if ours is helpful in some way, we'll share our thoughts on if this is something that we think people might enjoy. And then we will give a full-on spoiler warning to protect your virginal innocence if you want to avoid being spoiled on this film. So you can maybe step aside for half an hour, come on back for plugs at the end if you're listening live, or if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay. You've got the time index that Jim puts together for you. Thank you, Jim. You can skip around as needed and desired. So, all that said, Jim, Will, are you ready to turn on the bright lights and do some interrogating with this film?
That's right. Good cop, bad cop, crazy cop. Let's do it.
Bad cop, bad cop, bad cop. We're all bad cops.
Can I be the neutral cop, maybe?
I'm the chaotic good cop. You can be I don't know. Is this D&D?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Give me a perception check. I want to see if you notice a comment in chat.
Ooh, 7.
Hey, you actually passed because it's showing in the chat window. Patrick Hoover clarified, mouths open, tongues out, was for all of those scenarios. So there you go. We have an answer. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate that. All right, here we go then. Our discussion of The Little Things. All right, Will, if you don't mind kicking us off with a brief setup of this film, what it is, kind of what it's about, without spoilers, of course, and your initial impressions. Was this worth a watch during quarantine? What'd you think?
All right, so The Little Things, directed by John Lee Hancock, written by John Lee Hancock in the 90s, actually. This is a script that he wrote once upon a time, was thinking about getting made, Thought maybe it was a little too dark to get made then. Talked to Spielberg, talked to Eastwood, talked to a few different people, and it just sort of circulated until he finally decided to release this 90s crime thriller set in the 90s here in 2021. The film stars Denzel Washington. He plays this like older, grizzled, like former LA detective. Now he's a deputy sheriff, sort of like outside of LA itself. And he's sent back to LA because he's just got this quick little thing. He's got to pick up some evidence, kind of get gone, and go back to his own life. But while he's at his old apartment house, he runs into a sort of a younger, more like hotshot detective played by Rami Malek, and the two of them then become
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury. Well, I won't editorialize. Rami Malek is this young hotshot detective, and the two of them caught up in this hunt for the serial killer who is capturing women and doing bad things to them. This is a very, 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 very 90s movie in that if you think of things along the lines of like, I'm seeing a lot of comparisons to things like Seven, The Bone Collector, Kiss the Girls, like anything that's sort of in that camp. You see a lot of that here in The Little Things. And I think that is both its blessing and its curse. I think that this film was probably came out too late to be impactful, unfortunately. I think that this script coming out in this year, I was looking for it to do something different, to do something new, to do something exciting, or for it to be a completely boiled down and well-executed version of itself. It was neither. This is a very, very tepid film. Denzel Washington sleepwalks through this entire thing. Rami Malek, I'm starting to come to the mind that maybe Rami Malek is sort of a Eddie Redmayne-ish in that maybe he's not as good as actor as we used to think he was. Look, Mr. Robot's fine, but this was a bad performance. Rami Malek was just awful in this. I think he was miscast as well. He's supposed to be playing someone who's like this, like kind of like hot shot, rough and tumble dude. And he's not. He feels like a kind of a kid playing dress up, unfortunately. The only one who kind of works, and I use that with the biggest caveat and asterisk next to it, is Jared Leto, who isn't great here, but he at least seems like he's having fun. And I kind of wish that everyone else was allowed to just sort of ham it up a little bit more here. Instead, this is a boring movie that telegraphs everything that it does. Once we get to spoilers, like you'll go like, oh, well, that's what I was expecting from watching the movie. I can't recommend this movie. There's really not much to get from it aside from a huge waste of your time. And because it's on HBO Max, I guess it's in theaters too, but you're not watching them in theaters because it's a pandemic. Because it's on HBO Max, you're going to start drifting towards your phone. You're going to start like, maybe I can pause it and go do the dishes and come back. This movie does not demand your attention. This movie does anything but. Skip The Little Things. It's a drag.
All right. This is a big hearty not recommend from Will. I'll jump in with some comments a little bit later, but Will, I will tell you, we took a break 8 minutes into the movie. So go have dinner and watch Game of Thrones and then come back to it later. So maybe there's something to what you're saying.
Well, sometimes getting started is hard. And we'll talk about that too a little bit.
It can be. Yeah. Babe, how about for you? What were your thoughts on The Little Things?
I am so close to Will on this movie, I think. He hit on a lot of the same things that I was going to bring up, but I'll bring up definitely a few more. Yeah, I mean, this is not like a god-awful, like terrible disaster kind of a movie. I don't think. I just think it's the things that Will said to me. It's just kind of pedestrian. It feels like like one of those 90s, like a lesser version of some of those great 90s crime thriller or psychological thrillers like Kiss the Girls and Bone Collector or whatever. 9 other movies that Denzel Washington has been in of the 45 that he's done. And like you said, I think, I can't fault Denzel here. Does he have the charisma? Does he carry the charisma into this character that he might normally bring to other movies? No, I don't see that. You're right, Will. I think Rami Malek, from 10 minutes in, I'm like, this guy is miscast because, I'm trying to picture this guy, Rami Malek's character, as leading a band of detectives in LA. And I don't see it. It's like, I could never see this person lasting, more than a month on the job as an LA detective. It just, and I don't want to, I'm not going to besmirch Rami Malek's acting cred. I just don't know that the character that he brought to the screen, that he and the writers brought to the screen here, really worked at all. And you're right, Jared Leto was at least fun to watch. He was really chewing into his character, and that was the best part of the movie. And we'll get into that a little bit more in spoilers, because the appearance of his character is a little bit of a spoiler in itself, and we'll talk about when that happens. I mean, and you would think that with a script that was in development since the 90s, you'd think that they would be able to maybe juice it up a little bit. I'm not saying bring it into the present, because you don't need to do that. I mean, you don't need to do that. You could still do a really sharp movie set in the 90s. We were talking about it as we were watching it, and I brought it up in the kickoff. I'm like, why is this set in the 90s? I always try to think, when we have a movie that's a new movie that's set in a different time period, or why is it set in that time period? Is there a reason in the story that it's set in that time period? And I couldn't see one. I really couldn't see one, other than the fact that, okay, maybe they wanted to keep cell phones out of the story, because cell phones in a crime drama kind of thing, where clues are rising and things are happening and twists, having instant communication kind of changes the whole landscape. So maybe they wanted to keep that out, and that's a perfectly valid reason to do it. But otherwise, I couldn't see any reason why this movie had to be set in the 90s. I mean, it was cool and all with the music, some of the music cues, and seeing the cars and all that stuff. LA in the 90s. To me, like I said, I think there's an audience that's, that there's a Netflix audience that maybe is going to digest this movie and like it. Fine. It's going to be, good enough. I don't think it's going to knock anybody's socks off. It certainly didn't mine. I was disappointed. We'll get to the ending in spoilers. Very disappointing and unsatisfying by the end of this movie, and we'll talk about that too.
All right. So just to be clear, Jim, is this a not recommend? Is this a soft recommend?
From my standpoint, it's a not recommend. Although, like I said, I think there is an audience of people who will find this movie to be just fine. Like I said, it's not god awful disaster. It's just, for me, just doesn't bring anything to the screen that interests me right now.
All right. 2 not recommends. Jim, you mentioned that, this is set in the 90s, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of need for it. Our very own Magic Mike Lovins, who has since started his own amazing, fantastic podcast, The Real Game Movie Show. He says there was nothing about this movie that needed to be in the 90s. So if Magic Mike is co-signing a thought, there must be some truth to it. Even though I trust your thinking implicitly, sweetheart. Getting that Magic Mike cosign, that's a slam dunk. And I absolutely agree. Aside from the communication piece, and we'll talk more about this in spoilers maybe, but there's times where, like, instant communication could have potentially broken the plot. Where, like, one person's waiting on another and they're not near a payphone and they can't communicate. So that I see, but, like, they're also police and should have police radios on them at all times. So, like, they still should be able to communicate semi-instantly, maybe, question mark. I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that more a bit. I absolutely agree. Really wasn't necessary to put this in the 90s. On top of that, like, I feel I don't know. This is probably gonna sound shitty to say, but like I feel like I didn't see anybody talking about this film before it was released. I never even saw a trailer for this film before it was released. Now, granted, I haven't been in movie theaters in a year. Fuck, has it really been a year? Almost. So I don't see trailers like I used to, but like I've heard literally like no one else but you guys even talking about this film. So when we chose it for the show this week, I'm kind of like, gosh, I hope I've just been really busy and unplugged for things, and like this is something that's going to be awesome and really talked about. And then we saw the movie, and I'm like, yeah, no, it makes sense that like I'm not seeing a lot of folks or any folks, at least on my social media feeds, talking about this. Now, I will say I am not plugged into film Twitter. I don't follow film critics on Twitter. I mean, I'll be honest, I use Twitter for porn mostly. So like, there's probably a lot more discussion about this film on film Twitter, but I don't know. I feel like it is a little validating, I guess, now that I've seen the film, in terms of that, because I absolutely agree with both of you. This film, for me at least, was an absolute snore fest. Will, you mentioned that like it's very easy to just go into your phone. I was doing chess puzzles because they were more fun than watching this film. And like about the fifth time that they're like doing a stakeout in this movie, I don't think that's a spoiler. All cop movies have stakeouts. But by the time we hit the fifth fucking stakeout scene, I'm just like, I think I'm kind of done. I'm ready to do something else. And then I like tap the Apple TV remote so it can tell you how much is left in the movie. And there was an hour and 10 minutes left of the movie.
Yeah, it's a 2-hour movie.
You can ask Kevin and Jim. At that point, I let out like the world's biggest Brad sigh trademark. And I was like, fuck, there's really an hour and 10 minutes left?
We know the sigh.
Yeah, you do. And I'm a little embarrassed that you do. But yeah, by the time I got to the end of this film, and we'll talk more in spoilers, I'm not going to take up too much more time before we get to that. But I was just like, fucking hell, I'm so glad that this movie is over. Completely, the ending, just why? I don't know. This is not a recommend for me unless you really, 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 really get off on procedural cop dramas that are done completely by the numbers, just about,
Well,
and doesn't really take a lot of risks. So, not a win for me. This is a triple threat pass on it. But then again, form your own opinion, see what you think. But that's kind of where I'm at.
I love procedural crime dramas, but they have to be done well. They have to bring a little something different, or at least draw me in with characters that are more compelling. In this movie, I don't think we got. I mean, okay, Denzel Washington's character has a little bit of a hazy past, right? And we're not even really sure of that until later in the movie. And then, Rami Malek's character, we don't really know much about his character other than, I mean, we see him at home a few times with his family. It's just these characters are, for a movie that's 2 hours long, to have characters when you're focused on 3 characters and all of them are pretty paper thin. That's not a recipe for a good movie. And like I said, crime procedurals, I love. I can think of 24 more probably within the space of 2 minutes to label right here. If you want to see a good like Denzel Washington movie, go back to 1989. 1989's The Mighty Quinn. Like that's a great Denzel Washington cop movie. It's fun. It's but anyway, we got this one to talk about.
Well, and I think that there is an audience for this one. That's the thing. Right now there is a big like slew of like murder porn documentaries on like Netflix, for example, which when a new one of those comes out and you find out over the course of this 4-episode miniseries or this 2-hour thing, who it was that really killed someone in this small town, literally everyone on my Facebook feed is like super invested in it for that weekend or that week and a half. A lot of the people that I went to high school with, you know, people around my age, some of which have, you know, kids, and it's just like that's their thing that they do. So this is, and the 90s was very ripe with this style of movie. And so there's even an audience for me. Like I loved like gritty 90s crime thrillers. The ones that we mentioned at the beginning, Bone Collector, Kiss the Girls, all of those. Zodiac, like all of these types of films have a personality, and they're very much time capsule. They're very much time capsuled from a specific epoch of film history, but it's one that I was ready to dive back into. I was ready to feel like a super good, like, you know, 90s thriller, but this just sucked. And that's the thing, and that's why you're not seeing much about it, because a lot of those, like Warner, you know, HBO Max did they did their full court press on it. You know, they put it out there. It was on, like, when you go to HBO Max's page, it's like the top thing showing there. But that's not what draws people in. What draws people in is when people start talking about it on Facebook and saying, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe who actually did it. I have," you know, whatever it happens to be, and it starts to get viral momentum. This did not do that because there was nothing to sink your teeth into. The mystery itself was awkwardly resolved. The mysteries behind the mysteries are super well telegraphed to the point that when you finally get to them, you're just sort of like counting off the minutes. There's not any like fun moments that makes you think afterwards, like, well, maybe it was this other thing instead, and kind of driving the conversation. This was paint by the numbers. And it fell short. Even the color grading on this just looked like it was a carbon copy of those other things without doing anything new. Yeah, this is rough, and it shouldn't have been. You have all of the ingredients right there for something way better than what we got.
And I need to. You mentioned one of the technical aspects of color grading. I think what bothered me, especially early on in the film, was the editing. The editing was super choppy, and for a while at the beginning of the movie, I was super disoriented. And that's not in itself a bad thing, because some movies like to do that. They like to kind of throw a bunch of stuff at the audience, but then they flesh it out, and it starts to beautifully make sense in some movies. In this movie, not so much. But some of the editing just seemed really like quick cuts from conversations and angles, and it was distracting. Like I said, along with Rami Malek's portrayal of the character just kind of took me out of the movie.
You know, interesting that we're coming back to Rami Malek. A Drumming Man says, I had a hard time figuring out Rami Malek's character. His acting choices were odd and never got the experience his character was supposed to have from the way that he portrayed him. And yeah, Drumming Man, that's interesting. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more in spoilers, but like, I don't believe for a second that this character is the character that he's supposed to be. And I haven't seen the script. I don't know what the writing was like from a script perspective, but it seems like a very odd pairing, and it feels very unearned that this character is supposedly where he's at in his career. Mike Lovins also adds on, you can have all the ingredients and still burn the cake. And
that's
Mike,
what happened.
I think that's exactly what happened here. They left it in the oven too long. The smoke detectors started going off. There was all this smoke, but they're like, you know what? Fuck it. People are coming over expecting dessert. There it is.
Yeah, 30 years is too long in the oven.
Yeah.
Take note. Well, fellas, how do we feel about switching things over to the spoiler portion of our show?
Yep.
Yeah.
On board?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So for those of you out there, because we do have several folks who are with us, hi, by the way, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Feel free to say hi and share your thoughts in the live chat. Jim, yeah, go ahead.
Don't be shy. Put those comments in there. We want to read them. We'll call some out on the show. Live.
Indeed. But if you are listening live, this is your cue. If you don't want to be spoiled on the little things, or is it the big things in the little, whatever the fuck. If you don't want to be spoiled, step away for 25-ish minutes. Come on back for some plugs. Again, if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you digest MBP on the interwebs. Feel free to skip around using the show notes. And Jim, thank you again for putting that time index in there for folks. Spoilers for The Little Things are officially fair game. I've rambled long enough to where the fuck do you guys want to start?
I'll start at the beginning. We talked about Rami Malek's character and kind of the interplay between the two main detective characters. Denzel Washington's character, his name was Deacon, I think, and Rami Malek's character, his name was Jim something or Jimmy something, I forget. But anyway, at the beginning, you're like, okay, these guys, usually what happens in these movies when you have the two detectives, maybe from different jurisdictions, there's friction, and they're either trying to one-up each other and kind of instigating each other, you know what I mean, throughout the film, and one of them, usually the good cop, ends up solving it, and the bad cop looks worse than he already was. And I didn't know if that was the direction they were going, or, you know, they kind of team up and, you know, become kind of a duo and try to solve it together and cooperate. Well, obviously the movie has them teaming up, but I never got the sense that I don't know, the chemistry, whatever you want to call it, between the two characters just never gelled for me. And I just didn't buy that they would be able to work together to solve it. And that was a little weird in the movie, kind of that direction that they went with this.
You know, I had mentioned something to both of you a few days before we started, or well, I guess before now, as I was getting the show art ready, right? And I was originally going to have on there The Little Things, Big Problems, and I didn't do that because I'm like, and I was like, well, I if Brad and Jim end up saying that this is their favorite movie of the year, I don't want to, you know, put them in a position where it's like, you know, like that you two were like kind of backs against the wall because of the show art before we even start recording, you know. But
you could have just said Big Problems ?
But the big problems on this stretch all throughout. You know, we've talked about the performances, we've talked about the editing, and we've talked about the color grading, and those are all big problems. And I think you fix those elements, you can still fix big portions of this movie. But at its core, this movie has some big problems that I don't think that you can fix easily. This is you can have a cop thriller where you have cops sort of like working outside of the law and sort of like doing whatever it takes to get the evidence because in their heart they know it's right. You had that in the 90s. It doesn't necessarily make it right then, but it was a different climate then. Here in 2021, I kept cringing at some of the things that the police officers were doing here because they several times they sort of get outside of the lane of propriety. Like, let's just do this. It doesn't matter. We got to get our guy. You know, in your gut, this is what's true. And it gets even worse when you find out the kind of the big reveal at the end is that the reason that the Denzel Washington character, Deacon, is so haunted by his past is because in a investigation years prior, he and all of his friends on the force covered up a murder that he accidentally made, and none of them suffered any consequences for it. And this is the guy who we're supposed to be rooting for. This is the guy who, when he gives a moment of kindness because he knows what the Rami Malek character is going through at the end of the movie, we're supposed to at least empathize with. And the fact that this is one police officer who's like saying, yeah, I know what it's like to cover up a murder and face no consequences for it, so I'm going to help you get through it yourself, Rami Malek's character, was a little gross. And again, you can have some, you can tell a problematic story if you lean into it, if you make it big, if you make it, if you lean into the fact that it's kind of fucked up what's happening. This movie doesn't do that. This movie idolizes these characters and sort of slaps them on the wrist at worst when they create some pretty
horrific outcomes.
Pretty horrific outcomes, yeah.
Yeah.
And Will, you're not the only one. Sorry, Jim, to cut in, but Will, you're not the only one to feel that way. Hammy in the chat says covering up a cop murdering someone is very timely. Having said cop be seen as the quote hero is quite tone deaf.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
nail on the head, Hammy. Like, and not again, we're in the spoiler section. It doesn't just happen once, it happens twice. And we can excuse it. The film excuses it. Oh my gosh, it was an accident because of the rustling in the bushes. Oh my gosh, that guy probably had it coming because even if he didn't do anything bad, maybe he actually did. So my guts with theirs. In both cases, these guys sort of served as Judge Dredd, I am the law, and took things into their own hands and walked away. They're able to walk away saying oh man, I've really got sad about what happened, but someone else is dead because of your actions. I don't care how sad you are.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, you're left scratching your head, trying to figure out what is this movie trying to say through these characters, because that wasn't very clear to me at all. To me, there wasn't a clear message or tone that came across. Also, you're not left with a satisfying ending in terms of, they're chasing a fucking serial killer for God knows how many years now. And they think they're kind of on the trail of this one guy played by Jared Leto. And, at the end of the movie, you're still left with the very ambiguous outcome. Like, you don't know if that character was really a serial killer or not. The movie never tips its hand one way or the other. At one point it kind of does, but then it kind of reverts itself back to, oh, it's just a bad cop covering up for shit that, I don't know. That covering up for shit that he shouldn't have done in the first place. It's just weird.
Yeah, I feel like this movie couldn't decide how it wanted to end. I don't know if they focus grouped it and the ending was Rami Malek opening up the envelope with the red beret and being like, phew, I didn't murder somebody, he did
an innocent person,
but,
right?
I didn't murder an innocent person. And maybe the focus groups were like, man, this would have been awesome in the 90s when these things had pat endings, but it's 2021, fuck that. And so they're like, all right, let's add some more. Ha ha ha. Actually, he bought a beret from the dollar store and burned the other ones. And maybe the killer's still out there. We don't know. But I feel like you need to fucking shit or get off the pot with these things. Don't make people sit through a 2-hour and 11-minute police procedural and not fucking bring the procedural to a close.
Unless you have some other revelation to kind of punctuate your movie.
Yeah,
right.
It did not. It did not at all. So
and I'd even sort of take a step back from that too and say, I get what they were going there at the end. This is the thing that has haunted the Denzel Washington character. It's the reason he moved. We're led to believe it's the reason his relationships have been on the rocks and why he's really just sort of become a shadow of who he was. And he knows how much this can, killing an innocent person can haunt you. He knows that this younger detective is at the beginning of his career and will be haunted the same way. So by putting that beret in there, he's trying to spare him the fate that he's got himself. Cool. I get all of that. I understand why you would have that specific ending, but that specific ending works when your film is more of a tone piece about what
morality.
About morality, but more specifically about what it is to not face consequences for your actions and to have that hang over you every day. If we had spent more time exploring that with the Denzel Washington character, one, it would have made him more interesting. It would have given Denzel more things to chew. And two, it would have made that payoff all the more delightful. Instead, we spend a lot of time just playing in the whodunit space with the Jared Leto character. We spend so much time looking for evidence and looking for clues and looking at this portrait and who is this guy and what's that? And none of that shit matters. What really matters is thing that happened once upon a time haunted me, therefore I don't want it to haunt you. There's a moment in this that speaks to how bad the character motivations really are. and there's a car ride, and you've got Rami Malek's up front, Jared Leto is in the back, and Jared Leto says something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, if we weren't in this exact situation, we could almost be friends. And that's the type of thing that you hear in some of these that in some of those 90s types of things. In fact, there's a famous moment in Seven where Kevin Spacey's character is sitting in the back of the car that Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman are driving, and they're talking about how much I envy the life that you've got, which is much more motivated by things that are in that film. But there's nothing that led me to believe that Jared Leto's character actually felt like there was a kinship between him and the Rami Malek character. If anything, he spends a lot more time, the Jared Leto character spends a lot more time talking to Denzel Washington as they kind of play cat and mouse with certain things. So him saying we could almost be friends to Rami Malek felt like it was a cool line to put in the script that had nothing to do with the damn characters that appeared on screen. That's one of the big problems with this little movie.
And we talk sometimes in a totally different genre, horror movies. We talk about how characters make dumb decisions. There were so many dumb decisions in this movie made by cops that we, expect to be kind of on the ball and intelligent. Like, okay, so a detective gets in a car with a suspected serial killer at night to go for a drive out to God knows where, has no idea where he's taking him, with no real backup at all, because at the time that he left, he didn't know that Denzel Washington would be able to follow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. He was not around. So I'm like, why are they having him get in that's the stupidest fucking thing that I've seen in a cop movie in a long time.
Well,
and it only did it because of plot reasons.
Yeah.
Had to be with him.
And that's one of the moments I was referring to earlier about the communication, right? If Rami Malek had a cell phone and this were like a current day movie, we'd see like an overlay on the screen, like showing like a message being typed out, like getting in the car with what's his fuck, like follow me or whatever, you know?
Right, yeah.
So without cell phones, they couldn't do that. Again, though, they're police, they have radios, they should be able to contact each other. There was a fucking police radio like 2 scenes prior, in the apartment. So like, obviously that technology exists. He should have had the ability to communicate in some fashion, but didn't. So I actually think the fact that the Denzel Washington character is able to catch up and find him is a complete like shark. No, not a shark jump. It's a fucking free willy jump. That is what that is.
It's irrelevant. It's ultimately irrelevant because it's there to create inflated tension, because there is a low speed at night chase on the highway as the one car is trying to not be pursued and the Denzel Washington character is trying to find it. The problem is that the tension deflates immediately. He never comes close to finding him. He just happens to guess the correct exit. And he then happens to use his like the little thing's nose to sniff out the fact that, that one gate looks unlocked, but none of that fucking matters. All that entire scene was set up specifically so that you can have the Denzel Washington character arrive too late to do anything, but not too late to sort of help him with the aftermath. And again, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that more effectively. And I'm not trying to rewrite what those things are. That's John Lee Hancock's job. But for me, it added padding. It added runtime. Yeah. It took away from getting to those character moments that really never came.
Well, and it's interesting, too, from like a character logic standpoint. Hammy calls this out in the chat. He says, as soon as Leto confessed to knowing where the body is buried, Malek should have arrested him immediately. And that's such an interesting thing to call out here, Hammy, because, Jim, I think this is kind of what you were talking about earlier. Like, when the plot is mandating things happen for the plot, right, that are contrary to like what a cop or a detective
common
would really
sense
do in these kinds of situations, like that's a huge problem. I know they wanted to show Malek like obsessed and digging up all these holes to try and find the body that he is really hopes is there because he hit the guy in the head with a shovel and killed him. But like there are other ways to maybe get to that moment without being so nonsensical and non-logical.
And it goes back to character motivations, because I'm gonna, again, this is bad criticism. I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna compare it to another movie, because it copies a lot of things from this movie. So in Seven, spoilers for Seven, you end up with a very similar outcome in that you have a character who is specifically goading one of the two people that's pursuing him into doing something that is outside of the law and outside of what his normal morality would be. That's the whole what's in the box scene, and that's everything that led up to that as well brought us to that moment where a character snaps. This movie tried to do the exact same thing. The problem is that, at least from what I was able to gather, the Rami Malek character was not the one that was as obsessed and haunted by everything. He was a G-man. He knows his, like, he wants to get the guy.
He's the modern day G-man, right?
Yeah, he doesn't want more murders to happen. He doesn't want, someone to die on his watch. I get all of that, but we've already established that the Denzel Washington character is willing to sort of work outside of the rules of things. If, again, not to rewrite the movie, but it would have made a lot more sense if it was almost just the Denzel Washington character kind of committing the violence on the Leto character here at the end. Because you would at least understand why this character has been goaded by this thing that's been gnawing at him for so long. This, man, I did this fucked up thing in the past and I shouldn't have done it. But I did it because I was after this person and I never got them. And maybe this is the guy. I would at least understand that from a character motivation perspective. But instead, this felt like they were trying to throw a twist, or they were trying to throw a moment at me that came out of left field with no real substantial buildup.
Yeah. And then, of course, he ends up killing the guy out there in the riverbed or whatever it was. And, he's like, oh, what am I going to do? And of course, Denzel Washington's character comes to the rescue and says, we're going to do this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to dig a hole. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. I'll be back in a little while. I'm going to clean out his apartment. And the Rami Malek character says, just, okay, I'll do it. Like there was no resistance there at all for the right thing, right. Nothing. And I didn't see where that was coming from this character. Like, you wouldn't expect this character, who probably was doing things mostly by the book up to that point, would just all of a sudden flip to like Denzel Washington's character's motivations.
Jim.
The deacon, right?
Jim.
What?
It's not about the big things. It's the little things.
Oh, we did say the little things twice. That's why in the movie. That's why the movie's named The Little Things.
Don't forget. I mean, they didn't remind us enough, so I'm just reminding you again.
I do absolutely. This is an aside, but one of my favorite things is when a movie awkwardly says the name of the movie inside of the movie, and this is definitely one that I would put on my Sizzler reel of clumsy ones, because it felt like the movie like stopped, winked at me, and then kept going when he said it's the little things in this film.
That we need to put a supercut together of lines in movies that are the movie's title.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, maybe that already exists.
I'm sure it does. The internet is a wonderful place that moves at the speed of memes.
Yeah. Well,
Hammy, yeah, at least they didn't play that Bush song, because it is the little things that kill. Yeah.
Thank goodness for that, right? Oh goodness. All right. Well, I think we all universally agree, at least the three of us. This was not a great film that we necessarily enjoyed watching. I think we have a lot of issues with it. I feel like we could probably be very negative for the next half hour, but maybe
on a film this much.
Maybe this is a good time to just say, Jared Leto, Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, everyone else involved with the film. It is hard work to make a film. Totally respect you. Thank you for trying to entertain us during quarantine. We appreciate it. Even if we didn't like it, respect your talent, respect what it takes. But maybe let's move on to some plugs. What do you guys think?
Every movie is a miracle, but Yeah, let's talk about something else. Anything else?
Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so excited. Beth Ardner is listening. Beth has been a friend of mine for, gosh, 25 years now. Holy crap, I don't even know. But she says memes and cats. Maybe it's time for memes and cats.
Well, that's what the internet runs at the speed of, memes and cats.
Zoom cats and lawyers.
Zoom cats
oh my
and lawyers.
gosh, Zoom cats and lawyers. I
watched
promise
that.
I'm a live person. I'm not a cat, Your Honor.
I'm not a cat.
I can see that. No, I watched that clip. I watched that clip easily 20 times today.
Jim showed it to me when he got home from work. And it was funny, babe, because you showed it to me, and then I came upstairs and I had some work messages on our instant messenger. And someone had shared it at work as well, and everyone was just like dying. So I watched it like 3 more times, and it was amazing. So, Beth, thank you for our memes and cats break. Much appreciated. Adore you, friend. But let's get some plugs going. A few weeks ago on the Movie Bears podcast, I expressed some dismay at the idea of watching Game of Thrones again after the ending, because I was not satisfied. I was not happy by that ending, like so many folks. And I was like, I'm never watching that show again. Grumble, grumble, grumble. And Jim was like, well, are you sure? Like, you wouldn't give it another chance? Well, our friend Kevin, who is staying with us for a while, has never seen Game of Thrones. And so I was like, well, we're looking for something to watch. Cultural zeitgeist, like, let's throw it on. So we watched a few episodes just to give him a feel for it, thinking, maybe that's something he'll end up continuing to watch on his own. We're now nearing the end of season 3. We've been watching together, and I'm remembering how fucking much I loved that show, at least before the final season. So much so that the $300 Blu-ray Ultra UHD set that came out in March, I saw on Amazon it was on sale for like $100. And I'm like, a $300 DVD, Blu-ray, whatever set for $100? It's
with
hard
digital
to pass
download.
up.
With digital
download.
4K.
Right. So I bought the set, and we got it yesterday. We popped the disc in. We're 1 episode away from the Red Wedding, by the way. I won't spoil anyone if you haven't seen Game of Thrones. But we watched that episode on the Ultra, UHD Blu-ray, and holy fuck, was I blown away by the video quality. First of all, is amazing, but also the sound. Like, I don't know what's going on, like streaming it from HBO Max versus like watching it on Blu-ray, but the sound is just so much more immersive and thumpy and just fucking incredible. So if you love Game of Thrones and you saw that set like we did, and you're like, $300, man, I can't swing that. I don't know if it's still on sale, but you might take a peek and see if maybe it's time to pick it up. It does come with a digital download as well. It gives you all of those files through the Vudu app. So I had to create a Vudu account in order to redeem that and have those. But pretty cool going back through the series with someone who's never seen it before in Ultra UHD. So that's my plug for this week.
And it's a significant time investment to go through a series like that multiple times. And every time I watch it, even as much as I love it, I keep asking myself, okay, is this the last time ever I'm going to watch this thing? Like, or am I going to keep coming back to this and spending, I don't know what it is, 100 hours or whatever, 80 hours of TV, but it's definitely worth a watch. And you're right, Brad. I mean, for the quality of the product is great. And of course we know the show is good. So
Indeed. All right, Jim, what have you got for your plug this week?
In line with our main review this week of a psychological crime thriller kind of movie, I'm going to stay along those lines, but I'm going to jump to another, let's call it a cinematic TV series called The Sinner. I may have, I don't recall, I may have a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, plugged this. It's currently on season 3 on Netflix, I believe, The Sinner. They just dropped season 3. And it's one of those ones where, you love the series and then it kind of goes to sleep for a little while. And then all of a sudden you're kind of clicking through and you never saw anything, but all of a sudden, oh my God, the new season is up, and you just dive right in. Season 3 of The Sinner is out. The series is kind of an anthology series, and by anthology, I mean each season, not each episode. Each season is kind of a movie unto itself, basically, kind of like a mini series. And each season is about 8 episodes long, so about 8 hours. That's a couple days binging if you're into that. But it stars Bill Pullman as Detective Ambrose, and he's really good in this. I mean, he's great. This thing is produced by Jessica Biel, who starred in the first season as in a leading role, and she was amazing. Second season had Carrie Coon. You guys know Carrie Coon.
Mm-hmm.
She's great. And this season has, help me out, Matt Bomer.
Oh yeah, from
Matt Bomer.
Oh, he's great.
The Boys in the Band.
He's great. Yeah, he's the lead, as well as Chris Messina in this one. So this one has some really great talent. This is crime, drama, detective stuff done really well. And it's generally about how the series kind of examines like how and why seemingly ordinary people commit these brutal crimes. And so that's what each season is about. It's called The Sinner. I highly recommend it. It's available on Netflix. No reason not to watch it. Check it out.
Spoiler alert, the reason people commit violent crimes is because they run out of Captain Crunch berries. So just take that to heart.
Okay. All right. Or milk.
Even
I've got
worse.
a question, Brad. Have you run out of Captain Crunch berries?
I was close.
Should I be worried?
Thank goodness my loving husband got some more for me from the store yesterday.
We're on the generic crunch berries.
We are. We're getting those bags of colossal crunch.
Yeah.
But it's my morning bowl of carbs. It gets my day started. It's a nutritious, important part of every breakfast. But babe, thank you so much for your plug. I've heard amazing things about the show. I haven't seen it myself, but the 30 minutes I think I watched with you yesterday, I was like, oh, Bill Pullman, hello, daddy. I haven't seen that guy in a while, so maybe I need to go back and watch.
Yeah.
All right.
Matt Bomer, what can I tell you?
Well, I mean, Matt the Abs Bomer, you can't go wrong. Just saying. All right, Will, what have you got this week?
So Jim was along with us.
Yes, I was.
For this
I
ride
was
with
wondering
me,
if you were going to go there.
But I'm gonna zero in on one. But we had a chance to watch like a metric shit ton. They measured it actually, and it came out to a full shit ton of movies at the Sundance Film Festival over this last week, and a couple of which have actually already come out. Several of which are still looking for distribution or got picked up by Apple or Netflix or wherever. But there's one that's coming out this upcoming Friday. So it's Friday, February 12th that I want to point people's attention to. And it's the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. So this is a movie that it's a biopic starring Daniel Kaluuya. You'll remember him from Get Out, and Lakeith Stanfield, most notably recently from Sorry to Bother You. And it tells the story of Fred Hampton, he was the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, and that's who Kaluuya plays. And the FBI decides, we need to keep tabs on this guy. We don't want him to become the next big thing. So they get the Lakeith Stanfield character, who was sort of like a con man who they had busted, to infiltrate the Black Panthers and sort of serve as their inside guy. It's a really, really compelling biopic. Both of these actors are pulling down some pretty heavy dramatic work, but it's not sometimes these biopics feel big and important and you're kind of crushed under the weight of them.
Message. Right?
Yeah, it's not that. The message is there. Right. Yeah, it's like looking at someone that was on the rise and something that the FBI did that was pretty fucked up. But it follows it through the actual movement and kind of what they were doing all throughout it, and the kind of the conflicted role that the Lakeith Stanfield character has to go through. It's really, really good. You also got Jesse Plemons in this. We love Jesse Plemons here on Movie Bears podcast. Algie Smith, who was in Detroit, and there's a breakout performance by this actress named Dominique Fishback, who mark her name down now. She is gonna be like the next big thing. Like 2 or 3 years from now, we're gonna start seeing her in more and more prestige films and really taking note of her. So yeah, it's called Judas and the Black Messiah. It's on HBO Max and in theaters this upcoming Friday. Sort of like what happened with The Little Things, but you don't have to watch that one. You can watch Judas and the Black Messiah instead. It's very good.
Yeah, I love the performances in that one, Will. And I knew when I saw it, I said this movie could be talked about when it gets released. So I'm kind of looking to see what the conversation is around this movie once it's released. Hopefully it'll get some traction because it deserves.
I know it's starting to get a little bit of buzz in the kind of because of when it's hitting. It's going to be eligible for this award cycle. It's starting to be talked about for Oscars potentially, but even some of like the lead up awards.
So is The Little Things, Will.
Well, so is the Little Things. Yes, Jared Leto did get a nomination, a Golden Globe nomination, for his performance, which I guess he was one of the best 5 performances of this last year.
Bullshit.
Sorry. There was I guess I got some bullshit caught in my throat.
There was something. Yeah, I don't know.
Best performance maybe in this movie. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of award season coming up, guys, it's almost time for the MBP awards. Our superlatives. Will, being the amazing gentleman that you are, every year you kind of step up and help coordinate this effort for us. Would you mind maybe kind of cluing our listeners in as to what's coming up and how that's going to work?
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's time to roll out the red carpets for the 2021 MBP Awards, which we will be discussing live on this very platform next Tuesday. This is our chance to talk about films, celebrate films in ways that don't always get looked at by the awards, the big awards themselves. So we're not talking about Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Sound Design. No, we talk about 10 major categories, including Most Surprise Performance, most, if there was the biggest shock that you saw in a film, your favorite documentary, because we know that documentaries don't get enough love, sexiest on-screen moment. There's like 10 of these awards altogether, and it's one of our favorite episodes of the year, not just because we get to celebrate all of these movies and these movie moments, but because we get to do it with all of you. So just as we've done in the past, probably beginning if you're watching live tomorrow, but if you're listening later, starting kind of like on Wednesday of this week, so Wednesday the 10th, we're going to put out through our social media platforms a link, a little listener survey. It'll take you just a few moments to fill out, where you get to put your own picks in each of these categories. What movie most blew your socks off? Let us know. We want to know about these films, and we will of course be reading all of those on air, because it's not just our opinions that counts. It's all of yours as well.
Cannot wait for that discussion. My favorite category is hottest on-screen moments. I'm looking forward to sharing with you all what I think that is this year. I'm curious what yours will be. Always gets a little steamy when we visit that category. But man, getting a little warmed up just thinking about it. But audience, listeners, fantastic folks out there, we would love to hear your picks as well. So be on the lookout for that post, that link. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on Facebook. Let us know what you think. Jim, are you ready for some superlatives?
I am. Now that we've got this review in the can, I'm going to start putting my mind to some of these categories, because it's I don't know, it's different. It's strange to go back and try to pick out like snippet. It's one thing to like pick out the best movies, right?
Yeah.
Now you're kind of diving down another level or two to try to pick out, performances or moments from these movies, and that's requires a little bit more, like uninterrupted thought. So
Yeah.
And that's what's so exciting about this too, is I think that sometimes we, some of our categories are based around moments. And I think that it's very easy to think about like, well, these were the 10, these are the 20 movies that were good from last year. But sometimes an otherwise lukewarm film might have an amazing moment in it. And with our awards, it's possible to celebrate that moment. That moment might be the standout. In fact, I'm now thinking of a film right now that was not in my top 10 that had one of my favorite movie moments of the year. So it might fit into one of the categories. So that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Well, we will definitely be diving into that next week. Get those picks in. Let us know what you think. And Will, thank you again for putting that together. I know this show is a labor of love. It is a team effort. We all kind of do different things, but I know that's a lot of coordination. So much appreciated. And Jim, while I'm doling out the thanks to you so much for all of the editing that you do to get our audio episodes out. I know a lot of folks have been kind of watching live lately on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's so fantastic because you get to be part of the conversation. Right. We get to chat with you and have fun moments. But 95% of folks access the show through their favorite way to digest podcasts. So, Jim, thanks for lovingly crafting and editing those episodes and getting those out in folks' apps.
I actually enjoy putting them together. It's like a little project that I can, work on in an hour and get to the end and have something accomplished at the end of it. Unlike, our professional lives sometimes. It gives a bit of self-contained satisfaction, and I like that.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Well, between now and next week, when we start handing out some MVP awards, if folks want to chat about movies or whatever, Jim, where can people interact with you online?
You can find me on Twitter. It is in my on my handle is right here at JJP Out West, all one word, my initials, JJP Out West. Or find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Poliafico, also right here on the screen, Jim Poliafico. It's all right there.
All right. And for those who are not watching live, if you need to spell Poliafico, it's Puliafico. I had to learn how to spell it for the wedding certificate. Oh, I got to flex that knowledge whenever I can, babe. Hopefully it helps.
Or find Brad Harris and stalk his friends list.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Will, how about you? Where can people interact with you online?
You can find me sharing videos where lawyers dress up as cats on Zoom on Twitter. That's at whatever Gove is my handle there. You can also find me on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. There are two of us on there, so just look for the one that is bearded and is gay. You can also find me on letterboxd.com. It's a site where people go to post reviews of films that they've watched, as well as lists of gotta watch this or can't wait to watch this or whatever, My Letterboxd, you can just look for William Lindis on there. Give me a follow. I will probably follow you back.
All right. Excellent. And before I give you my deets, Ben, oh my gosh, just in time, a sexy friend. He says, hi, sexy bears. Good to see you, Ben. Welcome.
Hey, Ben.
We're wrapping things up, but it's always a treat to see your handsome face pop up.
Hey, Ben.
And hello to Saleh as well. So good to see you. I know some folks are kind of joining toward the end. We love and adore you and hope you will pop up next week to check out our MBP awards. If you want to chat with me, though, between now and then, you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro, which is on the screen if you're watching the YouTube video or Facebook Live. Or just think of it like iPad Pro, but like make it Brad instead of Pad. And there you go. You can find me there, as well as on Letterboxd under the same name at iBrad Pro. You can also find me on Facebook, just as Jim said, search for Brad Harris. There is a Brad Harris who, by the way, has put his Confederate flag back up in his background. I was so proud of him for taking it down, guys, but he's put it back up. I don't know why, but that's not me. I'm the one with a beard and not a systemic case of racism. So, message me there, say hello, but let me know that you're not a bot. Pretty please. That would be great. Guys, bots have started sending dick pictures. Have you experienced this?
I have not. No.
Yeah. I had someone the other day just send me like dick pictures out of the blue. And it goes like in your other messages folder or whatever in Facebook. So I thought it was a real person, and I'm like, that's an attractive dick. How's it going? What's up? And then you could discern it was a bot from the replies. So whoever's dick that was in those pictures, I feel bad that it's being shared, probably without your knowledge. But
what I'm hearing, and this is the wrong takeaway for me to say live on air, but what I'm hearing is that if you want to get Brad's attention and start a conversation with him, start with the dick pic, because it might lure him into like having the conversation. That's my takeaway.
That's got me thinking. Like if I, how these people, and it happens to me, like I'll be watching Facebook and an ad will randomly come up about something that I mentioned or thought of like in the previous few hours. So if I go around just like talking about dick and thinking about dick, will more porn show up in my Facebook app?
It won't be porn. It will be weird ads from wish.com for like sexual contraptions.
Will it? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yep. Retargeting is a thing.
Hammy says he's going to send me a pic of Dick Miller right now. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Some picture. Here's a picture of Richard Nixon. Here's your dick pic.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you to everybody who joined us live on the show tonight. Beth, Hammy, Soleil, Ben, Mike, Magic Mike Levins, Patrick Hoover. We had a full house tonight. So great hanging out with all of you. If you joined us via digital tape delay through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., we love you just as much. Even if we can't talk to you live, please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at MB Podcast, or search for Movie Bears Podcast on Facebook. Drop a line. We don't bite unless you ask us to. Anyway, we'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Be safe, stay sane, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.
I am not a cat. Bye.